Hey there, Bible nerds. Welcome back to Chapters and Chuckles by Kaye, where we dive into the Bible chapter by chapter. So, quick question before we start. Have you ever looked at a blessing in your life and secretly thought, like, okay, but I low-key earned this. So today we are diving into Deuteronomy chapter 9, and Moses is basically like, sit down, let's talk about that pride. So grab your drink, get cozy, and let's dive in. I have tea today. I have 2 tea bags of green tea. And then I also have water. Yeah, so this chapter takes us back to the plains of Moab. The Israelites are standing on the edge of the promised land. They can almost taste it after 40 years of um, wilderness wandering. They are finally about to cross the Jordan, but before they step in, Moses pulls them aside for what I would call a holy reality check. And I feel like I've been saying this every um, episode for every chapter, but this is what really the book of Deuteronomy is all about, right? So, and it's also a whole recap of everything that happened so far. So, I'm also gonna keep every episode, or I will try to keep every episode shorter until we finish the book of Deuteronomy. Because again, this is mostly a recap, anyways. So yeah. So anyway, so he starts with urgency, saying, "Hear, O Israel." So that phrase already tells you this is serious. Moses is not giving travel tips, he is addressing the heart. He tells them that they are about to cross the Jordan to dispossess nations greater and mightier than they are, cities large and fortified up to heaven. The people are Anakim, giants, the same kind of people who terrified the spies back in Numbers, right? The book of Numbers. The same giants that made Israel say, "We look like grasshoppers in our own sight." Like, Moses is intentionally reminding them of that trauma. You are about to face the thing that once broke your faith. But then he says something powerful in verse 3, saying, "The Lord your God who goes before you is a devouring fire." So that imagery, a devouring fire. Not a polite candle, not a soft glow. God is described as a consuming force. Like he will cross over before them. He will subdue their enemies. He will destroy them. So notice the order. God goes first, Israel follows. Then Moses hits the unreal issue. Or no, the real issue. That's unreal. He anticipates the thought that will creep into their minds after victory. "Because of my righteousness, the Lord has brought me in to occupy this land." He says, do not say that in your heart, not out loud, not whispered, not quietly justified in your spirit. The land is not yours because you are good. Um, it is not because you are morally superior. It's not because you outperform the Canaanites. It's not because you're this, and that. It is because of the wickedness of those nations. They're just that bad, that wicked. And because of the promise God made to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Moses is dismantling pride before it even has the chance to form. That is spiritual leadership. He is guarding them against future arrogance. He doubles down in verse 6, saying, "Know then that the Lord your God is not giving you this good land to occupy because of your righteousness, for you are a stubborn people." Imagine being called stubborn right before receiving generational blessing. Moses said, "Let me humble you before God elevates you." The word used implies stiff-necked, which is apparently a livestock language, which is also a kind of like a fun fact or a new fact for me. So like an ox or a livestock refusing to turn its head when the farmer tries to guide it. So that's called a stiff neck. It's the same term that is used now when you sleep at a wrong angle and then wake up with your neck stiff, they can't turn it, so that's stiff neck. Anyway, so God pulls, Israel resists. And now Moses does something interesting. He does not just say they are stubborn, he proves it with history, of course, because Israel has done this time and time again, unfortunately. He says, remember and do not forget how you provoked the Lord your God to wrath in the wilderness. From the day you left Egypt until you arrived here, you have been rebellious against the Lord. This is not an exaggeration. This is just a summary. And he goes back to Horeb, also known as Mount Sinai. This is the golden calf incident from Exodus. The moment when Israel turned one of their greatest miracles into one of the greatest miracles in history into a disaster. I don't know why that was hard to say. So picture this. Moses is on the mountain for 40 days and 40 nights, fasting, no bread, no water, just him and God, right? God gives him the 2 tablets of stone written with the finger of God, the 10 commandments, the covenant. And what is happening at the base of the mountain? The people are panicking. They tell Aaron, make us a god who shall go before us. They take off their gold earrings. Aaron fashions a calf. They say, these are your gods, O Israel, who brought you up out of the land of Egypt. Like the audacity. Like they had literally just heard God speak from the fire and thunder. They saw the Red Sea split. They ate manna, and now they are bowing to a metal cow. They just downgraded the audacity, right? So Moses tells them that while he was on the mountain receiving the covenant, they were breaking it. So God tells Moses, I have seen this people. They are indeed a stiff-necked people. Let me alone that I may destroy them and blot out their name from under heaven. That is so intense. Like God is ready to start over with Moses. Moses had to beg God, right? Not to destroy Israel. But here is where we see intercession. Moses says he lay prostrate before the Lord for 40 days and nights because the Lord intended to destroy them. He prayed, he pleaded, he begged. He appealed to God's promises, like he to his reputation among the nations, to his covenant with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. This is not Moses defending their behavior. He is acknowledging their sin, but asking for mercy. He even says he was afraid of the anger and hot displeasure that the Lord bore against them. Then he describes what he did when he came down the mountain and saw the calf. He shattered the tablets before their eyes, not as a tantrum, but as a symbol. They had broken the covenant, so the tablets were broken. But, they had already broken, really, their covenant before the tablets were even made. So, anyway, he took the calf, burned it with fire, crushed it, ground it to powder, and threw it into the stream that descended, from the mountain. That is thorough. He did not just confiscate it, he annihilated it. He also reminds them of other rebellions. Taberah, Massa, Gibroth, Havata. Each one was a moment of complaint, distrust, or craving that, provoked God. At Kadesh Barnea, when God told them to go up and possess the land, they rebelled. They did not believe him. They did not trust his voice. That was a turning point. Instead of stepping into promise, they chose fear, and that decision cost them 40 years, literally. So Moses says in verse 24, you have been rebellious against the Lord as long as he has known you. That is humbling. From Egypt until now, the pattern has been the same. But then again, Moses reminds them of his intercession. He fell down before the Lord those 40 days and nights because the Lord has said, the Lord had said he would destroy them. He prayed specifically, "O Lord God, do not destroy your people, your very own possession, whom you redeemed in your greatness." So he appeals to redemption. He reminds God of what he already invested in them. He says, "Remember your servants, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Do not regard the stubbornness of this people, their wickedness, and their sin." That is wild. Moses is fully honest. He does not sugarcoat their sin, but he asks God to look at his covenant instead of their failure. And then he says something strategic. If you destroy them, the Egyptians will say you brought them out only to kill them in the wilderness. He appeals to God's glory among the nation, and then the chapter closes with the reminder, "For they are your people and your heritage, whom you brought out by your great power and by your outstretched arm." Not their strength, not their discipline, not their spiritual maturity. God's power, God's arm. So let's sit here for a second. How often do we look at the promised land in a moment in our lives and quietly think we've earned them? The promotion, the healthy family, or the relationship, or the girl that you prayed for, the ministry growth, the answered prayer, right? I saw this quote on Facebook, I believe, and it says, it's not really a quote, but it says, "Do not mishandle what you have prayed for." Oftentimes, when God answers our prayer, we mishandle it, right? I see a lot of this, when it comes to like relationships, and I hear a lot. I listen to a lot of like crime podcasts, right? So I hear this a lot. When it comes to the wife or the husband or whatever, and like saying that they prayed for that person or for a person like this or like that to come into their lives, right? And then God answers their prayers, and then they mishandle it. They don't treat that person properly, or they're not thankful. They don't have enough gratitude or whatever, and then they mishandle it, and then they eventually lose that person. So I think that's very, like powerful. Keep that in mind. Do not mishandle what you've prayed for, whether it's a person, your girlfriend, your wife, whatever, or a job that you have, just be thankful, be humble, and yeah. Anyway, so um Deuteronomy chapter 9 confronts that instinct. Blessing is not proof of righteousness, sometimes it is proof of mercy. Israel's story shows a pattern of rebellion and grace. Over and over they fail. Over and over God remains faithful because of his covenant. This chapter invites us to humility, to remember our wilderness season. Like before God answered your prayer, you were in a wilderness season of your life. So to remember the golden calf moment in our lives, the times we panic and build something shiny instead of waiting on God. It also invites us to gratitude, because if we are honest, none of us are standing where we are because of pure righteousness. We are here because God kept his promise. Period. All right, so fun fact corner. Mount Horeb and Mount Sinai are used interchangeably in Scripture. I've said this multiple times in the past. It's the same. It's the same mountain, two different names, depending on who's using it or who's talking about it. So different names, the same holy mountain. The phrase devouring fire appears elsewhere in Deuteronomy and Hebrews to describe God's holiness and judgment. It reminds us that God's presence is powerful and not casual. It's pretty much all I have. Kind of boring fun facts. Just facts, I guess. Israel is about to enter promised land. They have been warned about pride. They have been reminded of rebellion. They have seen mercy, but the question still lingers. What kind of people will they become once the battle are over and the houses are built. Will gratitude last longer than wilderness? So, next episode, Moses continues to unpack covenant leadership and what God truly wants from their hearts. And trust me, it only gets deeper. Um, this chapter is a mirror. It is not here to shame. It is not here to ground us, to remind us that God's faithfulness is bigger than our stubbornness. And honestly, that is good news. Thank you for listening to Chapters and Chuckles by Kaye. If you've enjoyed this episode, please follow or subscribe. You can catch new episodes on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts. Until next time, stay curious and stay blessed.